I love superheroes. Superhero stories are the latest version of the myths and legends that humans have always told. It's like we're hardwired to want there to be someone who's enough like us to be relatable, but powerful enough to save us from everything we most fear. What if that want is a clue to something real? What if all those tales we tell are echoes of a true story, one that really happened once in history? That's what Christians claim about Jesus Christ. Let's unpack that claim.
We believe in Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son of God.
Names and titles help us understand a person's identity. When we talk about Jesus, we're referring to someone who mainstream historians agree was a real historical figure, a Jewish man who lived in Israel 2,000 years ago. Christians also call him Christ. That's not his last name. It's a title that means he's the king appointed by God to rule the world, the saving hero the Jewish scriptures had prophesied would come. That's not all. Christians also call him the only begotten Son of God. The word begotten is an old word for having a baby. When you have a baby, it has the same nature as you. It's different than when you make or create something that has a different nature from you. You can bake a cake or build a car or draw a cartoon, yet none of these things will share your DNA like a child does. God created the universe, including rocks and trees, humans and angels. But what's made by God isn't God. It doesn't share God's nature. Jesus is unique. Because he's the only begotten Son of God, he fully shares God's nature like no one else does. And because God has always existed, so has God's Son.
He was conceived by the Holy Spirit and born of the Virgin Mary, truly God and truly man.
How can a single human in history, a Jewish man, be God? That reality is greater than we can wrap our minds around. But here's one illustration. The late great Stan Lee was the storytelling genius behind the Marvel universe of superheroes. Until his death, he also had a cameo appearance in every Marvel movie. The creator of the Marvel universe became a character within that universe. He wrote himself into the story. That's like how God wrote himself into history by becoming a particular human being in a particular time and place. Jesus' conception was a miracle, but he had a real human mother, Mary, and he got a complete human nature from her, body, soul, mind, and will. The Bible records he was born and grew up. He felt happiness and sadness, love and loneliness, hunger and thirst, tiredness and temptation. But he didn't just come in a cameo role. He came to save the world he'd created. He lived as a human who sinlessly pleased God, so he could save the rest of us who haven't lived that way.
He died on the cross and was buried, to be a sacrifice both for original sin and for all human transgressions, and to reconcile us to God.
Jesus went through what we go through, even to the point of dying. And not just any death. He went through the painful, shameful experience of being hung on a cross to die. Because of who he is, even his death is for our good. That's why his death date is called Good Friday. He sacrificed his sinless life to cover for our sinful lives. Because he's both God and human, his death provides a way to bring God and humans back together again.
Christ rose bodily from the dead and ascended into heaven, and there intercedes for us at the Father's right hand until he returns to judge all humanity at the last day.
Just like us, Jesus was born and died. But because he's the only begotten Son of God, what came before his birth was a miraculous conception, and what came after his death was a miraculous resurrection. Jesus didn't stay dead. On Easter Sunday, he came back to life. He's not just alive in spirit like a ghost, or halfway alive in the body like a zombie. He's so alive that he'll never die anymore. And he's promised that someday he'll bring us all back to life too. Meanwhile, we can have comfort when we face death. There's nowhere we go, even to the grave, where Jesus hasn't been there, beaten that. When Jesus came back to life in his body, many eyewitnesses saw him. 40 days later, he left for heaven in his body, with many eyewitnesses watching. Someday, he will return in the same body to finish saving the world from evil, and then everyone will see him. Until then, he is praying constantly for us. He's our representative to God the Father. Jesus will never stop being truly human as well as truly God, because he's both human and God forever. He's the guarantee we humans can be rescued from evil and reconciled to God forever. He's the hero we need, the one we've always wished for, even when we didn't know it. It's a story so good to be true.